Caterers is the intersection of the profit and nonprofit communities, making Kansas City a better place to live, work, and play. This Casey Cares segment is brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation, www.kaufman.org. I'm Ruth Baum-Biggis. When Tamara Weber was a kid growing up in Pennsylvania, she remembers her dad lovingly tending to his backyard garden. The garden flourished, and she recalls taking the additional bounty to neighbors to enjoy. Well, fast forward, Tamara moved to Kansas City, enjoyed a number of years at Hallmark, as well as growing several new businesses here. Concerned about food waste and food insecurity, she recalled her father's kindness of sharing his garden, and the idea for Pete's Garden, named to honor her dad, took root. Today, Pete's Garden is flourishing, and she joins us to talk about the many ways her nonprofit is blooming. Welcome to Casey Cares. We're so glad to have you with us.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you so much for giving me this platform to talk about Pete's Garden.
Well, I think it's only appropriate to talk about your memories of your dad and in the garden and what that was like as a kid, trotting off down the street with bags of good stuff.
Yeah, no, I mean, both my parents grew up in a household where gardens were a thing. I mean, my dad, he would have been in his 90s. So I was the youngest child of older parents, kind of World War II generation parents. And our garden, my dad's garden, was really the source of our produce, most of our produce throughout the year. So whatever we didn't eat fresh, my mom canned or pickled or froze. Tomatoes were my favorite. I loved being able to just go into the garden and grab a tomato like an apple. And I still have a hard time, getting a supermarket tomato. It just does not taste the same. So when summertime rolls around and I can go to the farmer's market and get real tomatoes, it kind of reminds me of my dad. Cucumbers were another thing that I loved, being able to just get like a fresh cucumber from the garden. So yeah, I just grew up always being able to go out and pick something. And that was what we snacked on.
Well, and you've shared it. I think that's such a big concept. What a great role model for you.
Yeah,
you want to expand on that with your folks?
Sure. I mean, again, World War II generation, they grew up not wasting anything, so
right.
My dad was a green farmer, green gardener before there was such a thing as a green gardener. I remember having a compost pile back in the garden, and all of the food scraps from preparing dinner went to the compost. And he didn't use any, he didn't use any chemical fertilizers, not because he couldn't. I think that's not what he was used to doing. So that was what we grew up doing. We didn't waste food. And I think that's the thing, when you are a gardener and you know how much time and energy goes into growing your food, you don't throw it out. So, what we couldn't eat and consume ourselves went to neighbors, and everyone knew Pete's Garden. I mean, I grew up in a Scranton, Pennsylvania, so kind of a working class neighborhood. And we weren't the only ones with gardens, but my dad's garden was the best, and everyone knew Pete's Garden. And I have lots of pictures growing up of him in his garden. And I mean, when I would bring boy home, my dad would take him to show him the garden. Let me show you my garden. So so that's really a big part of my memories growing up. So when I started learning about food waste, and I like you mentioned, I don't have a career in the food business or even in the nonprofit world. I was coming from kind of a corporate background and business background. But my daughter actually had a project at school where she was learning about food waste, and I was learning along with her. And I really didn't realize what a big environmental issue it was, and really kind of a social justice issue. And for me, it just really bothered me that this good food that I know someone spent a lot of time growing and taking care of and getting to market was getting wasted. So, so she and I started looking to see what we could do in Kansas City to work to help out at a nonprofit that was working to reduce food waste. And there weren't really any things that this was back in 2019. pre-COVID, there weren't really any organizations that were solely dedicated to reducing food waste. There are a lot of great organizations in Kansas City that work to address food insecurity through a variety of means, but
Mhm.
food waste is typically more of a subset of what they do. So we, you know, I approached it really as a new business opportunity. That's kind of my background of researching and starting, looking at market needs to start a new business, and this was an opportunity that was just kind of staring me in the face. And the process of researching, I learned what other cities were doing, and that also bothered me that Kansas City wasn't
Hadn't done
keeping up
it.
with some of the other cities. So I just felt like, I have the skill set and the wherewithal to be able to um, put, put a pitch together, put a program plan together, and for what we could do around food waste. And I selected prepared food specifically because as a working mom, so I have a husband and two kids. My husband pre-COVID used to travel a lot for work, so a lot of times I was home by myself, essentially a single mom in the evening, trying to get a healthy meal on the table. And I know how hard that is. When you come home and it's 5:30 and your kids are hungry and you want to serve them something healthy, it's hard. And one of the great things about Hallmark was that the Hallmark Crown Room, which is our employee dining, in the afternoon after the Crown Room closed, they would put out take home meals that employees could buy, like service for four, for a family of four. And I used to bring those meals home a lot, and it was great, and it wasn't expensive, and it was healthy. And so my concept was if I could get this prepared food that's restaurant quality food that otherwise is going to get thrown out, can we package it up and portion it out and distribute it as free take home meals, kind of like what Hallmark was doing at the Hallmark Cafe? So that was the concept. And I put a business plan together. And I knew that I needed to have people that were going to take the meals. So I wanted to work with an organization that served families with kids because I approached this whole issue as like a mom trying to get a healthy meal on the table for her family. So I went to talk to Operation Breakthrough, which you're probably familiar with, a fabulous organization here in town
Hmm.
that serves hundreds and hundreds of families. And food insecurity is one of the issues that a lot of their families deal with. So went to talk to Mary Esselman, the CEO there, and presented her with my plan. And really, I was thinking we were just going to have a little friendly discussion around what this could be. But instead, she said, "Well, when can you start? When can you start getting meals for our families? And let me show you the kitchen where you can work across the street." So it went from a concept to a plan on paper to a pilot test within a matter of about 2 months. This was
Oh my
October
gosh.
2019. Yeah, so I mean, like I
That's
said, yeah.
amazing.
Yeah,
So
so Mary wanted to know when can we start getting these meals? So now I knew I had families that were going to, depend on taking home meals. So things started rolling pretty quickly from there.
so many things to unpack. First of all, kudos to learning along with your kid. Isn't it amazing what we can learn from our kids when they're
Yeah,
involved in something?
exactly. Yeah.
That's so great. All right, so here you were, you'd worked at Hallmark. Tell us your role at Hallmark. What area? Because it's a big corporation.
Yeah. Yeah, I've always been on the business side. So usually,
Okay.
people ask, were you writing the cards? No, I was not writing the cards or drawing any of the art. I was on the business side, and I tended to work on businesses that were kind of on the periphery. So some of the smaller businesses, the startup businesses. And that's really what I enjoy. I enjoy looking out at the market and trying to see, well, where are there some needs that aren't being met? And what kind of product or service can we bring to meet those needs? And that's exactly what this food recovery thing was in Kansas City. It was a need for it that our city had, and I had an idea about how we could meet it.
How helpful was it for you in creating a nonprofit to have this business background?
I think it was really key. And I kind of think about like when I get all you know thoughtful about what how I got, the journey to get to this point. Sometimes I think about like all of the skills and preparation that I had in my corporate world preparing me to do what I'm doing now. Because it's really the same thing. You have to develop a business plan. You have to have a business model for how you're going to operate. So where are you going to get funding from? Who are you going to partner with? Uh, what operational components need to be done, and who's going to do them. So it's really no different from any other entrepreneurial venture. And then, in terms of funding, I mean, any new business startup has to get funding as well. And
Right.
it's just that, my investors are my donors, and the return that they're looking to make is getting meals to people. So that's how we measure our return. How many meals have we distributed? And I'm really proud to say that this year we are going to exceed 100,000, getting 100,000 meals out to the Kansas City community. And honestly, when I first, like my original business plan, I was thinking it would be great if I could do 50,000 meals. That would be awesome. 50,000 meals. That sounds like a lot. And we've doubled what I thought we could do in the period of time that I had given myself. So yeah, I feel like what I have learned from my previous career helped me to meet this need that Kansas City had around food waste.
Your phone's going to be ringing with other nonprofit leaders who are going to want to be tutored by you because of your approach. I think you came from a passion point. You had this growing up with your dad, and then your daughter brings it, full circle, and you dive into it. But boy, I think that whole background in business is so valuable.
Well, and
And
I think that funders also want to know that their funds are going to be invested wisely. So that's not to say that you try things and sometimes things don't work out the way you expected, but that's part of any startup. You try things, and if it doesn't look like it's working out the way you intended, you switch gears quickly so that you're not spending a lot of resources on things that aren't working. And I think the other thing that's important, and this is true in for-profit and nonprofit, is that you have to really have a clear idea of what you're doing and what you're not doing. So, like, I chose to focus on prepared food because I knew, like, as I was researching what was happening in Kansas City, there's another great organization called Can Bees Markets, and they
right.
focus on produce. After the Harvest is another organization that focuses on gleaning produce. So produce, I felt like was covered. They have that piece of the food surplus situation covered. But prepared food was an area that wasn't being addressed. So that's where we chose to focus. And I think having a clear focus like that keeps you from going off in all different directions, because when you're starting something up from scratch, you have a lot of ideas and people give you a lot of ideas, and there's a lot of things that you could be doing. Sometimes you have to be smart about what you're turning down so that you could focus on the things that are going to make a bigger impact.
So we're talking about Pete's Garden, and it's petesgarden.org.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about how it works. How do you get the food? How do
Well,
are
first
you
of all, I will
repackaging, all that good stuff?
share. Well, first of all, I will say that we operate out of a commercial kitchen, Kansas City Health Department inspected kitchen on the campus of Grace and Holy Trinity Cathedral at 13th and Broadway, so right across from Bartle Hall. And we work primarily with caterers, restaurants, and food service operators. So if you think about big events, like the events that might happen at Bartle Hall, where they expect 600 people to show up for a dinner and only 400 people show up. Well, that caterer had to prepare for all 600, and now there's 200 chicken breasts that they don't know what to do with. So, what my organization does is work with those caterers. They will let us know that they have surplus, or that sometimes they'll call us even ahead of time and say, hey, we have this event and there's a good chance we're going to have food to pick up. So we pick up the food directly from the caterer. We only work with you know licensed caterers, so we rely on
Okay.
our food donors to maintain safe food handling procedures. We pick up that food. We have a refrigerated van, and we bring it back to our kitchen, and we have refrigeration here on site. And then we have volunteers that come in every day, Monday through Saturday, for a 2 hour shift, and we package all that food up in take-home containers. So proteins are packed 24 ounces per container, so enough for a family of four. And then likewise, if we have any, whatever sides we have, so things like mashed potatoes or macaroni and cheese or green beans, those all get packaged up. So the idea is that a family can take home a protein and a side, and it's enough for like four people. And then all of that gets distributed out to, like I said, I work with organizations that serve families with children. So Operation Breakthrough was my initial recipient, but since we've been growing, we've expanded to serve other organizations. So we also take food. Today we'll be taking food to Boys and Girls Club. We take food to them once a week. We work with Jewish Family Services. We work with an organization called Avenue of Life, which is in Kansas City, Kansas. So really, I work with organizations that provide an umbrella of services. So where my food
Mm-hmm.
isn't like one meal a week is not going to solve anyone's problems, but if it's part of an array of services,
Overall.
and the food is one more piece that maybe makes that family's life a little bit easier or more stable, that's what I'm trying to do. So I like to work with organizations that have an established base of services that they're offering families. And then my food, our Pete's Garden meals, can be one more service for their families.
Well, don't sell yourself short. I mean, even having that one meal on a table, that's one less meal, as you know, as a working mom, that you have to worry about. At least at least that one night your kids and you are going to have a good solid meal. So, kudos
Mm-hmm.
to you. Don't
Thank
Having
you. Yeah.
worked with some of those social service agencies, I know how much they greatly appreciate it too. Just brings us, full bellies bring a smile to people's faces, right?
Yeah. Well, what's really fun too is that when I started the organization, one of the things that I really wanted to do was make sure that the way we presented the food was nice. Like I wanted this food to look like something that you could have picked up at a restaurant,
Mm-hmm.
at a nice Whole Foods or something. So it's packaged nicely. We have you can see behind me we have a Pete's Garden branding label that's on every meal. And what's fun for me now and for our volunteers and staff is when families actually, like if we're wearing our T-shirt and we'll go somewhere, maybe where one of the families receives our meals, recognizes our T-shirt, and starts asking about Pete's Garden, and then they tell us about how much they like the meals that we get, and they'll tell us about some particular meal, some particular item that they really like, and that really that's when I feel like okay, we've done we've done what I wanted to do. We're getting meals to families. They're starting to recognize Pete's Garden as a source of wholesome, uh, great tasting meals. I also love to hear when moms will tell me about their kids trying, vegetables or something that they wouldn't normally eat. But I mean, the food we get is good. It's restaurant
Right.
food. So green beans or the way we're prepared, the way some of the sides are prepared. Maybe a kid gets to try an item that they wouldn't normally eat. And then they learn that they like green beans. So that's really nice to hear as well.
How did you grow your network of caterers and restaurants? I mean, did you just go knocking on doors, walking
Yeah,
indoors?
actually, yeah, I mean that that was part of it. When I had the concept, I reached out to there's Compass Foods is a global food service
Mm-hmm.
organization, and they have a subsidiary called Bon Appetit Management. Bon Appetit Management manages the food service for the Stowers Institute, for the Kauffman Foundation,
Oh.
and for American Century Investments. And again, as I was researching this idea and the concept, I reached out to their regional director, gentleman named Steve Tolliver. And it just so happened that when I spoke with him, he said, "Well, this is awesome because we Bon Appetit has a corporate initiative to reduce food waste and to find a food recovery organization here in Kansas City, but I'm having a challenge trying to find someone. So I will Steve actually offered to help me establish the organization and get it off the ground so that Bon Appetit had a place to donate their surplus food. He ended up being one of my inaugural board members. Another inaugural board member is Lon Lane. He's a awesome chef and caterer, the founder of Lon Lane Inspired Occasions Catering. He was also on my inaugural board. So through those contacts, I started getting the word out within the food community within Kansas City. And we've just been growing like as, you know, it's been it's been growth that we can manage. So, we'll get a new food donor and start taking in a little bit more food. And then we get used to doing that, then we'll get a new donor and a little bit more food. So gradually, and I've gotten some part-time staff. Fortunately, we've had some funding to get some staff. So now we're up to recovering upwards of 2,000 to 3,000 pounds of food a week. And it's from
Wow.
a variety of different donors. But I still, there's probably still food service organizations out there that don't know about Pete's Garden. So um, venues like this, opportunities like this, where I can get the word out. I always say that I never want to take food. If an organization has an arrangement with a nonprofit and they currently are donating their food, I never want to take food from another organization. But if the chef doesn't know where to take it or is going to throw it out, that's where we want them to reach out to Pete's Garden because we can make sure that safely and efficiently we can get that food to people who need it.
Okay, we hope you get tons of contacts after this, and we hope that this podcast is helpful for you to spreading the word. How do you handle that then? All of a sudden, if you were to get lots of donations, are you in a place where you can rapidly, I guess, grow
Yeah.
up?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like I couldn't double overnight. We had
Right.
an interesting experience when the NFL draft came to town. The NFL reached out to Pete's Garden because they were going to have all this prepared food from all of the NFL employees that were here in Kansas City for like 3 weeks,
Right.
preparing for the draft and then working the draft. And during that time, we doubled the intake of food and the output of food. So that gave us a good idea of what does it feel like for our organization to do twice as much food. We have the physical capacity in terms of the space where we're operating. We would need to scale up our volunteers, and we've been really fortunate in having a loyal group of volunteers, which continues to grow because people come and they pack food and they have a good time and they feel like they're making an impact, and then they tell their friends to come. So our volunteer base has been growing. We would need to obviously scale that up, or if we were taking in more food, we have the capacity to add another shift. So like right now we pack food from 10 to noon every day. Well, we could do another shift from 1 to 3. So we have the capacity to add there. We probably would need to look at, having another van if we started, literally not being able to get to every place with one van. So I've been growing, and that's the other place where I think my business background comes to help because I'm growing in a. I don't want to I don't want things to get out of control. I mean, at the end of the day,
Right.
it's food, and I need to make sure that the food is safe and healthy to eat. And if I have any doubts about our ability to, you know, take in and redirect that food safely, then I'm not going to do it. But right now, we definitely have the capacity to get in more food donors.
What's the best way for people to connect with you, either to be a food donor, a
Mhm.
cash donor, or be a volunteer?
Yeah, I mean, our website, you can do all those things on our website. So petesgarden.org. We have a volunteer tab that and a sign up directly from our website. If anyone is interested in donating food, again through our website, there's a contact us button on the website, and a lot of times that is how people reach out and find out about us. And they'll go to the website, and I'll get those emails, and then usually what happens next is that I'll plan a time to talk one-on-one because each donor's situation sometimes is a little different. So
Right.
some food donors we pick up regularly. We have a regular schedule twice a week picking up food. Other donors, it's more event-based. So a caterer that knows they're going to be doing a big event, and if they expect that there's going
Hmm.
to be surplus food, we can kind of plan around that. So really everything that people need to know would be on our website. And you can donate there too.
What at this point, where the organization is, what's the biggest challenge that you think you face, and have you come up with a plan to meet it?
Well, I mean, eventually, I think we'll hit a cap where there isn't any more good quality food. I do have
Right.
type of food that I'm distributing is it's restaurant quality food. So at some point, I'll have gotten all of that food, but there's still a need for more families to get to have meals.
Mhm.
And I think one of the things that is becoming clear to me, and I think to the recipients, the organizations that get these meals, is that it's great to have a food pantry, and food pantries are critical as a way to address food insecurity. But being able to take home a meal is something special. Something
Mhm.
it's the 1 or 2 nights a week when, like you said, you don't have to prepare anything, you don't have to wash the dishes, and the demand for that is way more than I can fill. Probably even if I had every, food donor in the city donating their surplus food, I don't know that I can meet that full demand. So we're looking at other ways that we could continue to get meals to families in an efficient, cost-effective way. So that's really my next challenge. Once we feel like we've maxed out uh, our potential with food recovery, what are other ways that we can enable family mealtime? Because that's really what Pete's Garden is about. It's enabling family mealtime, making it a little easier for those families um, that have a hard time maybe getting a meal on the table every night, and making it a little bit easier for them to have that time together over a shared meal where they can connect.
It's a full-time job for you.
Oh yeah, yes, this is a full-time job.
When you reflect, having worked, in corporate, et cetera, and what you're doing now, just wonder what your sense is of the joys, the challenges, whatever. You've been in this long
Yeah,
enough to make that
yeah.
comparison, right?
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and it's something that I do think about quite often because I have my daughter. My daughter was in 8th grade when we started learning about food waste. Now she's a freshman in college and she's thinking about careers of her own. And I think what's important to me and what I've tried to teach her and my son is that whatever career path you take, you have to be doing things that make a difference, that matter in some way. And for a lot of my career at Hallmark, I was doing those things. And you don't have to be in a nonprofit to do important things and to have an impact and make a difference, even if it's just a difference, making a difference to the people on your work team. So that's important. But I got to a point in my career where I needed something more, and I really wanted to get more hands-on with making a difference in the community. And if you think back to 2019, I mean, it was pre-COVID. I mean, and it's still there's just a lot of negativity, in society.
Unfortunately.
And for me, this was one way to just like quiet out all of the negativity and like, okay, I can't do everything. I can't fix everything, but I can fix this little thing. And that's a good thing. That makes me feel good. So what I try to tell my kids and when I talk to we have a lot of high school students who come and volunteer for service hours. And I always try to tell them like, everyone has something that they can do to make things a little better for someone. And it doesn't have to be, you're not going to solve world hunger or anything like that, but you can make things a little bit better for 1 or 2 people. And that makes you feel a lot better. And, you hear a lot about, um, you know, teenage anxiety and mental health issues. And I think if I think teenagers who learn that, helping other people actually helps them,
Yeah.
that's a really valuable lesson. So that is something that I
Well,
feel like I've learned. And hopefully when kids come and volunteer at Pete's Garden, they feel like they're doing something valuable, because they are.
well, we're grateful for you and all that you're doing. It's Pete's Garden, petesgarden.org. Thanks for spending time with us.
Thank you so much, Ruth. This has been a real pleasure, and like I said, a real opportunity for me to get the word out to more people. So thank you.
Thank you for joining us for KC Cares, Kansas City's nonprofit voice. This KC Cares segment was brought to you by the Ewing Marion Kaufman Foundation. Spread the love, and you'll find us on Facebook and Twitter at KC Cares Radio and Instagram at KC Cares Online. You can check out everything about the podcast and what we're doing at www.kccaresonline.org. And don't forget, Saturday mornings, you can catch us at 8 a.m. on ESPN 1510 a.m. and 94.5 FM. Thank you for joining us on KC Cares.